Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on our webinar today. I'm Tony, and I'm Wired's Digital Marketing Trainer. So, as is our usual start, we'll start off the session with just a little bit more information about Wired Marketing in case you haven't dealt with us before. So we're a full-service email marketing agency specialising in email marketing. Our clients range from small businesses to large PLCs and everything in between. We offer managed services through an agency-style setup for clients who want to outsource their email marketing strategies, as well as offering support and training to clients who would prefer to create the email templates and campaigns themselves and then before sending them themselves. So whether you're looking for a bespoke template, do-it-yourself email sends, or full campaign strategy and implementation, we can support you to that success. Now, my own experience spans over 20 years, during which time I've been involved with digital marketing projects ranging from small, highly targeted, postcode-specific campaigns to full national and multinational integrated marketing strategies. Through that time, I've worked across a number of B2B and B2C sectors, and obviously love sharing what I've learned through that time. So that's what you need to know about us. We'll now move on to the webinar. Now, we always have a broad spectrum of attendees at our webinars. The main aim of this particular webinar is to go a little bit more detail into marketing automation and how we can set up the automation programs on the Wired Marketing platform. So we're building on from last week's marketing automation overview. So the webinar should run for about 30 minutes, and you can contact me directly after the webinar finishes if you've got any questions, or if you just want to have more of an in-depth conversation as well. Feel free to use the control panel on the right hand side of the screen to ask any questions as we go through as well. I'll try and pick those up as soon as I can if there are any questions as we go through. So this is what we'll be covering today. So the importance of planning your automation programs, creating the programs based on your particular strategy. We'll then look at actually creating an automation program on the Wired Marketing platform. We'll go into much more depth into the drag and drop editor and the functionality we've got there as well. We'll also look at inserting your email campaigns into those programs, and then a few alternative uses for automation programs as well. So as marketers, we want to create automation programs for one of a number of reasons, I suppose. It could be that we need to save time to do other things, or it may be that we realise the benefits of automating the customer journey, as we covered last week, so reducing relevant costs and just being more effective in the work that we do as well. Using automation programs, we're looking at actually leading our contacts and prospects through a journey rather than just acting sort of reactively to what they're actually doing. So it gives us ways and means of leading our contacts. But whatever our intention, we need to have a plan and a strategy in place so that we aren't just creating random automation programs just for the sake of it. The ease of use of the drag and drop editor, as you'll see shortly, does lend itself to being able to create quite a lot of programs. But if we're doing that just here and there without an exact strategy in place, it can get a little bit messy and a little bit disjointed. And obviously that then takes up more time to sort out, and the idea of automation is to make our lives that little bit easier as well. So as with every other marketing discipline, you need to have an idea of what you want to actually achieve first of all, how you'll achieve that, and what you need to implement to get there. There is a quote out there that a good marketing automation program can do the work of several marketers. Some people have even quoted figures of around 50 marketers, so you can see the time savings and the efficiencies that we can benefit from by having really strong automation strategies in place. So to make an effective program, you need to consider the contact's point of view at every step in that particular program. So as I say, we're looking at tying this in with our target audience and buyer personas, also the customer journey mapping that we'll have done as well, so we know when people are coming into contact with us and what they need to get out of it for us to move them along that journey themselves. So what different tracks will they go down if they open an email compared to if they don't open emails? Where do we take them through that program if they actually click and follow a link in an email rather than the people who don't follow the clicks in the emails, follow links? So the creation of the automation flow and logic behind each step can take some time to create. And that, to be honest, is probably the only time-consuming bit, is actually getting the logic and looking at the journey that we're wanting to take people on. Sometimes it can be quite an effort-involved job, and it's a little bit like soul searching. Sometimes you're looking for literally every opportunity and every activity and an option that contacts could go down to then lead them back to where you need to get them to. So if they don't open a certain campaign, how do we get them to open the next campaign? What will we change? Can we automate that process? And in most cases we can, once we've sat and sort of documented it. So creating the program based on your strategy. So just considering the logic and the flow of the program is never going to be enough, though. I do send my apologies on that regard. You also need to tie the automation programs in with other strategies that you're implementing as well. So they should really support your overall work, not be used as a separate sort of strategy by themselves. Email's always going to be the central hub of the marketing activities that we go through, mainly because it is the one unique identifier that we have with our contacts. So our CRMs and whatnot, we may have several customers or prospects called John Smith, for argument's sake. So having that unique identifier certainly helps us track the data back to those individuals and contacts, and then obviously we can start using that for segmentation as well, the extra data that we're collecting from there. So you also need to consider at which stage the contact is in their customer journey as well. So as I've already mentioned, there's no point leading them down a certain route or program if it's not relevant to their unique situation. And this is where we start tying in the personalization and the segmentation parts of the wide platform as well. So we're looking at it as a purely holistic platform approach when we're looking at including automation programs, and obviously email's central to that as well. So for that reason, your buyer personas and customer journey maps are also important to helping you create the most effective programs that you possibly can. So all of that being considered, we'll now take a look at how the wide marketing platform actually enables us to start using automation. So we'll look at introducing the drag and drop editor, the individual functionalities there, how to insert those email campaigns. But first of all, what I wanted to do is actually show you how I personally would go about creating an automation program, and this is the one we'll actually be creating on the system as an example. So what I'd do is I'd look at, initially, although it's not overly clear, you can see the sort of brainstorming process here. There's always got to be an entrance into the marketing automation program, and as you see in the system shortly, you've got to set up a rule to actually put some contact details into these programs initially. Whenever we've got a start, we also need to have an end. And then basically what I've done is plotted out a welcome program for a webinar sign up. I thought that'd be appropriate for the webinar itself. So we're looking at sending an initial email saying thank you for registering for the webinar. We then look at some date splits and all this functionalities within the wide marketing platform, as you'll see shortly. So just wanted you to see how I'd go about it, and usually it does end up with sheets of paper and whiteboards full of logic flows. Again, this is going to be a more straightforward version of an automation program for one specific purpose, but for in the real world, I suppose you'd ultimately end up with a lot of programs all doing different things. So we'll get back into the system itself. So automation obviously comes under the automation tag at the top here. So we've got the three options. We've got My Programs, we've got the triggered campaign content, and we've got a default autoresponder option there as well. So for the purposes of this webinar, we'll be using the My Programs and the triggered campaign content. So going back to the email campaigns themselves, the best thing to do is always to plot out the automation program first, so you know what sort of emails you need to trigger at certain points in that campaign, in that program. So what you'd do is you'd actually create the emails first, so then you've got them ready to plug in. There are ways of putting placeholders in as well, which I'll cover shortly, but it's always best to have those emails planned so you know when they're going out and you've got that content in place. When you do create the email campaigns initially, you can choose a standard email, which is a one-off send, or you can choose to have it triggered. These are the emails we're talking about here, and anything that you've set up to be a triggered campaign would show in the triggered campaign content. So as you can see, we've got quite a few examples here, and the setup of the system is always the same when it comes to folders and files. So down the left-hand side, you've got the different folders and the campaigns for the triggered content this is, and you can also add new folders and add a new campaign there. So that's it, setting up those initial emails. So we'll not go into that in too much depth. Obviously, if you want to catch up on the creation of email campaigns, we've got on our system in our resource section the means to be able to watch the recorded session there, and you can also catch up on our YouTube channel as well if you wanted to catch up on the creation of email campaigns. So we'll go into my programs, and this is where we start building the programs that we're going to be using. Now, with it being a demo account, you can see we've got quite a few test cases and lots of different sort of examples here. But what we'll do is we'll go through the process as you would to create a new program, and it's as easy as just clicking on the new program. The usual naming conventions come in, so we'll just give it a name, and we can also choose which folders if we've got multiple folders to save the program in. But for the purposes of this, we'll keep it in programs, and then we continue. So it's webinar sign up demo 1. And the system now takes us through to the drag and drop editor for automation programs. It looks a little bit different to the email campaigns, and to be honest, down the left hand side here you can see the options that we've got. So you've got 3 actions, 1 in a delay, 4 indecisions, an end, and a text label. So first of all, what we'll do is we'll actually ignore the building of the program. We'll put a text label in first of all, just so I can give you a little bit more information, which will make sense as we go through the automation creation. But what we're doing here is creating a webinar sign up for a webinar that's going to take place on the 16th of December at 11 AM. So we're going to keep this logic in place here just for ease of use, and it'll make sense, as I say, once we start looking at these date splits later on. We're going to try and use every option that we've got down this left hand side for you. So we don't have the 5-step process as we do with the email campaigns, and as I say, there does look to be quite a limited amount of options down this left hand side under the actions and section here. But we've got everything we need to create even the most complex of automation programs themselves. So campaign, whenever you see that on the wide platform, it's always going to refer to emails themselves. So when we look at dragging this across and just dropping it into the program itself, this is where we're actually saying we want to send out an email campaign. We can then update contact. So again, if we drag that across, it's just as easy as dragging them in where we need them. But the update contact will actually start allowing you, as part of the automation programs, to update certain data fields that are already housed in the platform itself. So if you want to change someone's name, if you're doing a quality check there, you could update that contact's data based on various things. If they've signed up for a webinar, in this instance we'll be using that shortly, we can then update a data field that says somebody's attended the webinar as opposed to not attended a webinar. So again, very, very powerful, but very, very straightforward to use on the platform itself. We then have a subscription option. Now, as you can see, if we do hover over any of these options, it does give us a little bit more data, a little bit more information on what we'd use these for. But a subscription, as it says there, updates the address books that the contacts subscribe to. Not only that though, it also allows you to then subscribe the contact to separate automation programs. So when you get to the end of, say, this webinar sign up one, what we'll do is, as part of it, we'll move somebody across into a lead nurture program rather than letting them just end that program there. So we can create multiple programs and join them all together using subscriptions. And that's what that's there for. And also to update address books as well. Delay. So if we weren't to use any delays in our programs themselves, it will literally run from start to end through everything else that we've plugged in, all in one go. There wouldn't be any delays, and it'd just be literally campaign, 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 campaign. Everything would go out all in one fell swoop. So delays are really, really important so that we can actually make sure that there's good spacing in between our communications as well. Now when it comes to decisions, we can also create rules. So if someone's opened, they'll go down the yes route maybe. If they've not opened, they'll go down the no route. That's a straightforward one. There's lots of other decisions we can make in the system as well, as we'll cover shortly. We can then choose to split by date. We can split by a certain quantity, so decide how many first contacts go down one route. So we can say the first 10 contacts to come through this system go down this route, and everybody else goes down the other route. So it's a good way of sort of separating sets, and maybe quantity split could be used for things like split testing as well. And random split for the same purpose, but again we can choose to split randomly rather than just saying the first 10 or 15 contacts. As I mentioned when we were looking at that photograph that I took of my flowchart, whenever you've got a start, you've got to have an end. If you don't have an end in your program, you'll see in the top right here there are certain options. So we've got exit conditions, we've got validation. Now if there's ever an issue with the programs you're creating, this will be showing as red. And as you can see when we hover over it, you can review the validation errors which may prevent the program from being activated. So until all these are green, we won't be able to activate the programs and we'll get error messages. To see where the issues are, we just click on them, and you can see that we need to ensure that all program routes terminate with an end step, because we've not got an end step on screen at this point in time in the program. That's why we're getting that error. And as you can see, the second error is to add at least one action to the program. So again, there needs to be some data in there for it to be able to decide whether or not it can activate. So at this point we don't need to be unduly concerned with those errors that we're actually seeing there. The exit conditions. Again, contacts will exit the program on reaching one of the end nodes, unsubscribing from the account, or on meeting one of these particular rules. So again, we can set certain rules here as well. So going back to the editor itself. Finally, we've got that text label that I've just used over here. Now these are really useful for maybe leaving logic notes for yourself. They're not part of the program. It literally is just a way of being able to make notes on screen. If you're working as part of a team that's working on bigger program projects as well, or maybe somebody's responsible for the start, somebody's responsible for the email campaigns, somebody's responsible for the updating of contact details. When you're working as a team, it's really helpful to be able to make notes. Now it's not just a case of being necessarily forced to use it like this. What we can do is actually drag it over certain boxes that we make. We can resize that, and using the options at the top here, that edit node, we can actually change the color of them as well. So maybe if we want to, in this case, make it pink, you can see that it highlights certain sections. So you could have in this text here, Tony's looking after the start of the program. Once we get further down the process, you can then assign that section to somebody else, and you know who's been working on it and why, or if there's any issues, or even just the purpose of that part of the thing. So for now, we'll just resize this again, and we'll just leave that box over here for that logic. So as I mentioned before, what we're looking at doing, sorry, it's just going a little bit slow there. We're looking at creating a webinar sign-up process for a webinar that's taking place on the 16th of December, and it's going to be at 11 AM. So first of all, we need to look at this start condition. And as you can see in the box here, it says create that start condition. So we click on that first of all. And this is where we choose how people are actually going to enter this program itself. This is going to be a webinar sign up. So first of all, what we need to do is set a daily schedule, for argument's sake. So we can say that daily at, and we'll choose a time, maybe at 9 AM, the system will search for something else. And this is where we move on to step 2. So this enrollment rule, we can choose to trigger this from a contact date field, or we can trigger from a segment. There's a little bit of a difference between the two. If we trigger from that contact date, you can see that we've got two options. We've got the trigger from a contact date field itself, or a birthday or anniversary program. Now if we add contacts to program in this first option, we can choose so many days before or after, and then select a date field. Now we've got birthday, last subscribed, last mailed, created date, last open date. So for argument's sake, if we were looking at a welcome program from a newsletter sign up, what we might do is trigger the enrollment into this automation program based on that person's created date. So that's when they've first given us their details. And we can say one day, maybe, after they've been created, we then include them in the program. For the purposes of this though, we don't need to be using that section. We're going to trigger this from a segment. Basically, somebody signing up to our webinar is going to be put into a separate address book, and that address book will then be used to choose whether people go through the rest of the program. So we'll trigger from a segment. Now it's just loading some data here. As you can see, we've got another drag and drop editor, just as we did when we were creating segments for our email sends and in the data management webinar that we covered as well. We're using exactly the same sort of logical processes here. So what we're going to do is include contacts that are on a certain address book, and that would be the webinar sign up address book. So what we need to do is find our webinar sign up. And we've got webinar sign up December. So present in any address book basically looks through everyone we've got, but what we're looking for is present in a specific address book. And then we can choose the webinar sign up in December. And then it's as easy as just choosing that. So once we know that that person's in that address book, we can apply this. So every day at 9 AM, we're going to look and see if we've got somebody in this address book, and then we can set some enrollment limits. Now what we want to do here is the first option. Enroll contacts in program only the first time they meet the start criteria. This means that every day that it checks at 9 AM, anybody new in that address book will then go through the automation program. So it means that we're not repeating steps or sending people multiple times through the same automation program. We can choose the other two options for different types of programs we may use. So we can re-enroll them on the program every day they meet the start criteria, or we can re-enroll them if they meet the start criteria but not if they've been enrolled in the last X amount of days. But for our purposes, this is just going to be the first time they meet this criteria. And then we apply that. So now we've got, working through the logic, every day at 9 AM, we're going to check to see if somebody's in the webinar sign up address book for December, and the first time they meet that, they'll then go down this program. So we can apply that, and that's it. The logic's created to get people into the program itself. So now what we've got to do is think about, right, what do we need to do next? So the first day they meet this, we're going to send them an email campaign that's to say, thank you for registering. So we drag email campaign across. We can join up the dots, and we can put these anywhere we wish. So we can drag it, we can change it to there if we wish to do so as well. But for the purposes of this and the logic of the next steps, we'll drag it there. So based on that rule, the first time they meet that rule, we're then going to send a campaign. And this is going to be that welcome, thank you for registering campaign. Now, if we've not already created the triggered campaigns themselves, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, what we can do here is create a campaign and set a placeholder in the program itself. That email campaign won't have any content in it. It won't allow you to actually activate the program itself until you go back into the triggered campaign content in the top option, in the top navigation automation in there. But it will let you create the program and then put placeholders in place. But what I've done before this webinar is actually created campaigns, so we can select campaigns that we've already sent. And this is going to be, as I mentioned before, the webinar sign up thank you campaign. So all we need to do is highlight that, and that'll include it in there. If we wanted to preview that, again, we can go to select campaign just to walk you through the whole process, and down the right hand side here you can see those preview options. So we can actually look at that email campaign just by clicking on that, and that gives us the usual preview screen. So we're using the webinar sign up thank you. And then what we need to do is consider, for our purposes again, the webinar's on the 16th of December. We need to consider when we're going to send a reminder email out. That would usually probably be a week before, and then we need to factor that into our program. Then we need to send a reminder maybe the day before, and then also a reminder maybe 5 or 10 minutes before the start of the webinar, and we're automating every stage of this process. So with the next part of this, we're looking at creating the part of the campaign that decides what happens just as people are signing into this up to the webinar. So we want to do different things a week before rather than a week, maybe 2 days before. So we're going to put a date split in here. This date split allows us to choose what happens before a certain date, what happens after that date. So for the purposes of this section, we're going to choose the 8th of December, which is a week and a day before our webinar itself. I'm going to say at midday on that day. And then we need to choose what happens before that date, what happens after that date. So somebody signed up for the webinar, we've sent the email thank you out, and then what we're going to do is wait a day on the before section. So we're going to put a small delay in there if it is the 8th or before the 8th of December. So if somebody signs up today, we'll send the thank you, but then we're going to wait a day because we're before the 8th of December. If it's after the 8th of December, we're going to add another delay, but this is going to be a slightly different one, and you'll see why shortly. So we've connected that up. We've got a little bit more of a logic flow here now. What we'll do is, to make this a little bit clearer, we'll just drag this to the top, just to make it a little bit clearer. So there we go. So we've got a before and an after track. So we're separating down using logic where the contacts now go based on the dates. So we're waiting 1 day here, but if it's after the 8th of December, we're going to wait until the 9th of December. And what we do here is we can wait a set number of days, or we can change the delay type, and we're going to wait until a set date. And we're going to wait until the 9th of December on this route, and I'll explain why shortly. I'm going to choose midday again for this one and apply that. So now we've got wait 1 day if it's before the 8th of December, and if it's after, we're going to wait until the 9th at midday. So back to the before route. We're going to put a decision in here whether they've opened up the webinar thank you email that we sent. So we need to put a decision node in, and again we just drag that in. So we're delaying 1 day, and we're going to make a decision based on whether they've opened the email that we've sent or not. So if they've opened, what we're going to do is track this across here to the wait until the 9th of December. So if they signed up today, we're going to wait a day. So we'll check this tomorrow at 9 AM. At midday, as we set in this logic field here. And then we're going to decide whether they've opened that initial thank you campaign we've sent. If they have, we're going to then wait until the 9th of December to send them a webinar reminder. And that webinar reminder would be an email campaign. We select the campaign, and as I mentioned before, we can create a placeholder, or we can select the campaign that we've created. And this is where we're going to send webinar reminder 1 week before. And then we apply that. So that campaign's already in place, ready to go. Now, if they've not opened that initial campaign we sent, the thank you campaign, we're going to make a decision, and what we're going to do is actually send them that campaign again, that thank you campaign, just to give them another prompt to say you've definitely registered, we've got your details, etc, etc. So we select that campaign, select the same one again. So we're going to repeat that email campaign, but we're sending it based on the fact that we know they've not actually opened it already. So we're just giving another prompt. So as you can see, we're building up sort of a process flow here and a journey for them to go through based on certain logic points and date splits. And then once we've sent that thank you again, we'll then move them across to delay. So again, if they've not Sorry, I've not covered the section there. So the decision, this is where we choose the condition. So what's going to be the yes, what's going to be the no. So for this, as I mentioned, it's going to be opened a campaign, but we can also have clicked, has been sent, certain field rules and advanced segment rules as well. So for this purpose, it's going to be the email open. We've only sent one campaign to them previously, which is highlighted there. If we've sent multiple campaigns, it'll give you a choice of to say which one are you wanting to say yes or no to, and we apply it. We can choose whether to retry within the maximum wait time or whether to do that immediately, but because we've waited a day already, we can do this immediately, and we apply that. So as you can see now through the logic, we've got they've entered the address books they've signed up, we've sent them a webinar thank you sign up email. If the date's before the 8th of December, we'll wait a day and then decide whether they've opened that initial email we've sent. If they have, we'll then wait until the 9th of December before sending a webinar reminder for the week before. That's just the nice considerate email we send just to keep them through that journey. If they've not opened that initial email we sent, we'll then send that email again, just as another prompt to say thank you for signing up, and then we move them back into this journey. So everyone now is going, no matter whether they've opened or not opened that initial email we've sent, going down to this part of the section here. So we're waiting until 9th of December to send an email reminder that says week to go till that campaign. We now need to wait a few days because again we don't want to overdo the communications with people. We want to put a little bit of a delay in, and we're going to say right, we're now going to wait until the 15th of December, the day before, and we're then going to send a campaign that says the webinar's tomorrow, don't miss it. So for this we'll put a delay in of 6 days, and that'll take us through to the 15th. We're on the 9th of December, we've sent the email campaign, and then we're going to wait 6 days. We can wait until a specific time on that day as well if we wish to do so, and maybe for this one we'll choose maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So again, you look into your contacts and when the best times to communicate with them are, if you're going to be using specific times, and we apply that. So we'll wait in 6 days at 2 p.m. and then what we're going to do is send another email campaign out that says don't miss our webinar tomorrow. So we drag the campaign across. We can move it just so we can keep a little bit of tidiness for our purposes. So we've got a select campaign, and this is going to be the don't miss our webinar email that goes out the day before. So again, I've already created that campaign, webinar December, don't miss it. And we apply that. And there we go. So the day before at 2 p.m, we're now going to send that don't miss it delay. Don't miss it campaign. We're now going to wait until obviously the 16th of December. This is the day of our webinar, and we're going to send one last campaign out, one last email to say don't miss our webinar, it's happening in an hour, here are the login details, all the information you need to know. So to do that we need to wait until a specific date, which will be the 16th of December, the day of our webinar. And because our webinar starts at 11, we're going to send an email at 10 saying it's an hour to go, don't miss the webinar. As you can see, we've got that delay there. We need another email campaign in here now, and we just drag that across there to join it up, and this is our don't miss it 1 hour before email campaign, again that I've already taken the luxury of creating. In fact, I've deleted it, so what I can do is show you how to put the placeholder in. So we create campaign, we give that campaign a name, one hour to webinar reminder, we choose where that campaign is going to sit, and then we create that and apply. And as you can see, that'll put a placeholder in. Now at this stage we've got a little bit of an error at the top, so it's still showing that we need an end step, but you'll see shortly that this will actually update to tell us that we've not got the campaign in. It's not created, it's an empty placeholder. So this is this 1 hour to webinar reminder, And then we need to decide, has somebody opened that or not? Because based on that, we'll know whether they've actually attended our webinar or not. So they've opened it, they've got to open it to click it. So we put a decision in place. So this decision is going to be, have they actually clicked? So rather than looking, have they opened, we're going to choose whether they've clicked, because we can deduce the fact they've already opened it if they've clicked. So contact us, clicked a link in a campaign. And we're looking for a decision type email, click in the email campaign that we've just sent, and that'll be okay. We then want to maybe do that immediately, or we can retry. We'll do it immediately for this purpose. So 1 hour reminder goes out. Have they clicked in a link, which the link would be to the webinar in that email, to take them through to the webinar itself. Now, if this is a yes, what we're going to do is we're going to actually update that contact's details, a data field, which we've created already. Again, if usually you'd have this data in place, so if it's such things as travel time or your postcode, that sort of thing, you can update any data fields that are there basically. But this is going to be webinar attendee, and is yes, we're going to apply it. So if somebody's clicked on a link in our 1 hour reminder, we can kind of deduce that they've attended the webinar. So we're going to update that contact webinar attendee data field to say they have attended. So that's a yes. On the other side of that, we also need to update the contact to say no. So this is a good way of sort of collecting data automatically that you can then use further on down the line in future programs or as segments as well. And there we go. So that would be no, and apply. So no matter whether they've clicked on or not clicked on this email itself, we then can say safely whether they've attended or not attended the webinar. We can't say how long they've attended the webinar for, but we can say that they've actually clicked through to that page itself. And the last steps here, if somebody has attended the webinar, we're going to subscribe them to a new program, which is a lead nurture program that we've set up. So we click on the subscription, and we've got 3 options. So we can add to selected address books, remove from selected address books, or add to program. So add to selected address books would be if we had an address book that said attended December webinar campaign, that sort of thing. Remove from selected address books would be really good for removing people from contact address books, such as re-engagement campaigns. So if you're sending an email campaign out automatically that says, we appreciate you've not opened the last 3 or 4 emails that we've sent you, unless you resubscribe, we're actually going to take you out of our contacts. So it's a good way of cleansing the data set as well. And that's where you'd use remove from selected address books. And then you can also add to a program. So if we choose the address books, we can then just select which ones we've already got populated there. But for this, we're going to add to a new program. And as you can see, that's now changed. And we select which program that's going to be. And we've got a lead nurturing program already set up. We can add them to more if we wish to do so as well. But for this, that's it. So if they've attended our webinar, we update the data contact field to say they are now a webinar attendee. We send them to a lead nurturing program, and then what we're going to do is end the program there. Now, as you can see at the top, we've still got an error, and that validation error is that ensure all program routes terminate with end step. So because we've not actually finished the job here with this contact, if they've not attended the webinar, it won't let us continue and then potentially activate the program. So if they didn't attend, we're going to make one last step. We've updated the data field anyway, but we're going to send one email campaign out that's already created that says we really missed you at the webinar. So webinar we missed you campaign. And then once that's gone, we'll then terminate that program there. As you can see, it's now telling us we've got no errors in our program. So we would be easily able to now activate this, and it would give us a prompt to save it. So we should always save as we go along, just in case any browser crashes or anything like that. We have no errors in the program. We've got everything set up to lead them through the webinar sign-up process. All we now do is click on activate, and it'll start checking from tomorrow, because of the rule that we gave it right at the very start of the process. Here, it'll start checking obviously at 9 AM the following day. So anybody who signed up today will be new. we then lead them through that process there. So we've got the sign up thank you goes out. If it's before the 8th of December, we'll wait a day, check to see if they've opened that email. If they haven't, we'll send it again and then wait. If they have opened it, we'll wait to the same date. That's the week reminder before. So we wait until the week before, we send a reminder, it's a week to go, don't miss out. We then wait 6 days to the 15th, the day before. We then send another campaign that says don't miss our webinar tomorrow. We then wait until the day of the webinar itself at 10 AM, and now we're before the webinar starts. We send another campaign to say it's 1 hour to go, don't miss out, here's your link to and all the information you need to attend. We decide whether the person or contact has clicked in the link on that campaign itself to deduce whether they've attended the webinar or not. If they have, we update the data to say yes they have. We then send them to another program where we'll nurture that lead. If they've not attended for the purposes of this campaign, we update the contact to say they didn't attend, and we send them a we missed you campaign. And that's it. And that's, I suppose, quite a straightforward program. It seems a little bit involved, but when you start using the system yourself and getting used to how the logic works and where you need to lead people and base different parts of the campaign on the behaviours that they're showing as well, it can make things a lot easier. As I say, sometimes to set up these type of programs and looking at that logic, it's sometimes best to look up using whiteboards or maybe software such as Visio or Lucidchart and that sort of thing, to be able to plot those program flows out. Even PowerPoint, you could use the text boxes on there to create a rough idea of a flow as well. But yeah, the biggest job with automation programs is always going to be the sort of logic behind and getting people to where you ultimately want them to get to. So that's how we sort of create the programs on the platform itself. Just another couple of considerations really, as I mentioned at the start of the webinar. There are pretty much an unlimited amount of customer journeys that you could potentially automate, and hopefully from that webinar sign up you can see how easy it would be to start introducing them into your marketing strategy. As I say, it's just a case of just knowing where people are in the journey, where you want them to get to. But a few more common automation programs that I did mention in last week's webinar as well, and if you didn't catch it, the benefits of automation programs themselves, please go to the YouTube channel to watch that. But a few more popular ones are obviously welcome programs, newsletter programs, lead nurturers we've just covered in the webinar there. Post sales, so if somebody's now become a customer or they're using your products or services, you can then lead them through to retention and advocacy stages using post sale. We can look at re-engagement campaigns, so we can decide based upon the contact's age from the created date. We can say maybe in 6 months, if they've not engaged with so many email campaigns, we're going to take them out of the address books. But what we'll do is we'll send them an email campaign first to try and get them to re-engage with us. If they don't open and click that, we'll then just take them out of an address book. So really good for re-engagement. We can use them for events such as this webinar sign up, anniversary or birthday campaigns. So again, these are all campaigns that will go out automatically based on the individual contact or prospect or customer that you're contacting, rather than just going out in bulk all the time. That increases that relevancy, and the relevancy obviously increases the chances of return on investment and conversions, whether that's sales or sign-ups, that sort of thing. We can look at loyalty campaigns as well, and also multi-channel, so we can, using the data that we're integrating hopefully with our CRM and the Wired Marketing platform, we can say, for argument's sake, if somebody's a user on Facebook, we'll send them such and such a campaign. If they're on Twitter, we'll send them a different campaign, and use the logic that way as well. So in conclusion, planning your strategy and which programs you're wanting to automate gets you a long way towards success with automation. Having that background, that foundation, and knowing what you want to get out of them is very important. It's a lot more involved than just creating a basic 2-email autoresponder campaign, though. This is a case of really leading people over an amount of time. As you can see in the webinar sign up, we're looking at maybe 2 weeks down the line from today, but that program could have been running for maybe 2 or 3 months before today. And what we're doing is still making and leading people through that journey, and they're still getting the timely communications that they need. And as I say, you're really looking to lead customers rather than just follow them. So a well-structured and thought out plan is sort of pivotal to the effectiveness of them. When you've created that plan and your goals from each program, the Wired Marketing platform then makes it really easy to set those programs up. If you do have any questions or concerns about maybe setting up your own automation programs, we're always more than happy to answer any questions. Our details are going to shortly be on screen. So as I say, we're more than happy to answer any queries or to offer any advice if you're looking at using automation programs in your strategies and you're not quite sure where to start or how to work the logic out, or maybe if something's not overly clear as to how you could get the result that you want from the platform itself. Sometimes you can get a little bit blinded by the logic of the programs themselves. So sometimes a little bit of advice always helps there. So feel free to contact us if you want to see how we can help achieve email marketing success or the marketing automation programs, or even if you just want to have a chat about what you're doing with your campaigns at the moment. The next webinar will be a live session next Friday at 11 AM. It's the 9th of December. We're soon getting through this month again. We'll be discussing reactivation campaigns, re-engagement campaigns, and also remarketing, and how we can implement those using the Wired Marketing system itself. If you want to attend that, please visit our website and sign up there. And finally, with the Wired team and I'd like to thank you for attending the webinar today. We wish you every success with your email marketing. I've got a question on screen, so yeah, thank you, Steve. Yeah, by all means, give us a shout. We'll be more than happy to answer any questions. Natalie as well. Thanks, Alistair. So what would be the best way to practice automation programs? Would it just be create an automation program and have you as the only contact in the address book upon entry? So when it comes to the automation programs themselves, as we've just set up in the webinar there, it's actually looking at a whole address book. So hopefully the webinar sign up form landing page, if we're using that part of the platform as well, or wherever we've got that sign up form, will be plug in individual contacts in numbers. But basically from a standing start, the new automation program itself, you'd set up the rules to get you ultimately the contacts in there that you need to lead through that program. So whether it's a welcome program, they're usually going to be either sign-ups or new customers potentially, or new prospects. If it was maybe a newsletter program you were setting up, you'd then maybe look at using certain segments, maybe the geographical segments on the platform, or maybe certain segments maybe based on behaviors or products or services that they're using. So making use of the address books that you've got already and then plugging them in to that initial program that way. You can then refine that data that you've got, as I mentioned, using the update contact fields. So in theory, I suppose you could have a sign-up form that was just collecting an email address. You then automate that contact through a journey that collects extra snippets of information which are then updated into the platform as you go through. So from a one email and literally just an email sign-up form, you can then go through maybe a little bit of a profiling exercise, so making the most of that early engagement, saying, right, now you've signed up for our newsletters, do you mind if we ask a little bit more information so we can give you the best service possible? So would you mind telling us who you are, where you're from, what your interests are? And then using the sign-up forms to update the data fields. Those data fields can then be used to segment going further on, maybe through the automation program themselves, or maybe through certain campaigns that you'd be sending as well. So it really is a case of, if you're using a standing start with automation, look at maybe a welcome program, maybe a re-engagement program, maybe even a conversion or a lead nurture. Get those in place first and then start building from there. Ultimately, you're not going to see how effective the automation programs are until you've got people and contacts going through them to see where it's working, where it's not working. But yeah, so if you create an automation program and only one contact's going through it, then it might be a case of looking at the logic and why you're using that program in the first instance. But hopefully that answers your question, Alistair. Super. But yeah, if it, again, as when you're creating those programs, or if you've got any concerns about maybe getting contacts into them, or something doesn't seem to be working well, give us a shout. As I say, we're more than happy to advise where we can. The automation programs, as you've seen, can save an awful lot of time and effort once they've been created. And it's kind of a case of, are they working? If they're not working, what do we need to change? And just making small adjustments as you go. Again, like most marketing disciplines, it's a case of sort of experimenting and optimizing, analyzing what's working and what's not, and then trying again. Does anybody else have any other questions at all? No? No, that's super. Well, thank you very much for your questions, Alistair and Steve. Thank you everyone for attending again. Hopefully we'll see some of you next week. As I say, we're looking at the reactivations, re-engagement campaigns, and it works on nicely from the automation programs themselves. Again, it's something we can actually automate, and as part of the webinar next week, I'll go into that in a little bit more detail as well. But if all else fails, have a great Friday, have a great weekend, and hopefully we'll catch up soon. Thank you very much.